Hello, you found Why We Are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott, and I'm sitting here talking to a guy with a kind of a funny name. Last name, Larry Rosenbaum, right, Larry?
Yes.
And where do you live?
Well, I live in Oakland, California.
Oakland, California.
Yes.
And we go way back, don't we, Larry?
Yeah, we do.
We crossed paths a few times,
Yes.
but just a few.
Right, right.
Yeah. Okay, now, Rosenbaum, now what, is that a German name?
Well, it is actually a German name and means rose tree, I guess, although I don't think there are really rose trees, so I don't know. But anyway, it's a German name, but most, I would, at least more than half of those named Rosenbaum are Jewish, and I am Jewish.
Okay, you're Jewish. Okay.
I've met Rosenbaums who aren't Jewish, but most are, yeah.
And you were born in Camp Kilner in New Jersey.
Right.
Your dad was a doctor in the Army in World War II.
Right.
And so there you go. But you moved after when you were 1 year old.
Yeah. The war ended, and so Dad ended the Army service ended, and so my family decided to move to Indianapolis as a good place to raise their children. I was the second child. I have a brother who's 2 years older than me and two that are younger. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Where'd you go to high school?
Well, I went in Indianapolis, North Central High School. Yeah.
Okay. What did you like about high school?
I found the studying challenging. My family was very into education, and so I was too. And I was really good at school. I was essentially a straight A student, except sometimes in physical education. I didn't do quite so well.
So you didn't play any sports?
No, I was not an athlete. Yeah.
You went to Yale.
Yes.
And you got a bachelor's, a BA.
Right.
And you studied social science?
It was called Culture and Behavior. That was the actual technical name of my major, which was a combination of psychology, sociology, anthropology, and biology.
Okay.
And so it was a unusual major, but that was my major.
And you also went to University of Chicago.
Yeah, I spent a year there, graduate school in psychology.
Okay.
And then moved to Brandeis University, where I got my master's degree.
You got a master's in psychology from?
Yes.
Where's Brandeis?
Brandeis is it's outside of Boston. It's in the suburb of Boston. It at least used to be predominantly Jewish people there. Super smart, very high academics. The psychology department, the leader was Abraham Maslow. That people who know psychology know who he is. He's the founder of a branch of psychology called humanistic psychology. So that was the emphasis there at Brandeis.
Well, we have a connection. My bachelor's and master's were in psychology.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, psychology. Yeah, that's what I like too. I was always a bit weird, and I was trying to figure myself out.
I think that's why most people study psychology, is they're trying to understand themselves. I had problems, and I didn't understand them, and I thought, well, if I study psychology, maybe I'll figure out what my problems are all about, and it seemed that way. And actually, a very high percentage of people in psychology in that field are Jewish, a very high percentage.
Yes, that's true. So you say you were raised in a reformed, meaning very liberal, Jewish home.
Yeah, there are three branches of Judaism: Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox. Reformed is the most liberal. It was established in the middle 1850s about. Really not into hardly at all keeping any of the laws or any, basically it's super, super liberal. So we would attend synagogue twice a year for the high holidays.
Okay.
And that was it.
Twice a year?
For the high holidays, my whole family except my mother. My mother never, I don't think I once saw her go. I don't know, she had some excuse, but she just never went. But the rest of my family all went to the synagogue, and we would sort of try to fast on Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement.
It says you say here you went to Hanukkah and a Passover.
Well, our family at home would most years we would celebrate Hanukkah. It's sort of a competition to Christmas, I guess you could say, because it happens in December. and you get presents. But our family, like a lot of Jews, we had the Christmas tree too, and we celebrated Christmas and Hanukkah, just because it was sort of thing to do, and we probably got more presents on Christmas than we did on Hanukkah.
Okay, Larry. Wow. Okay.
And that's all I cared about back then.
And you say here, my family believes in Darwinian evolution.
Very definitely. You know, they are all very well educated. My mother had a master's degree in language. She knew a couple languages. And so she was very well educated. My father, of course, medical. He was a doctor, graduated from Yale undergraduate, and then Johns Hopkins Medical School. So very educated, and of course you get totally indoctrinated in Darwinism in almost any college you go to. And so they were definitely strongly believed in Darwinian evolution. And so it really doesn't leave any room for God in reality. And so they sort of, you know, I mean, they wouldn't claim to be atheists, but, you know, God was sort of a meaningless word to them, I think.
Okay. Okay, you're a Christian, right?
Now, yes.
Yeah, you're a Christian. Now, how did that all happen?
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a story. You say here in high school, a Nazarene friend invited you to a Youth for Christ meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a meeting right across the street from our high school where I attended. And so he invited me to these meetings. So I went to a few of the meetings. I liked them. I liked the people. They talked about Jesus. I liked that. But nobody really explained the gospel to me in any clear way that I could understand. So I never got saved, but I was attracted to that.
Okay.
And my parents, particularly my mother, was very upset that I was going to these meetings. My mother, who never attended synagogue, but nonetheless was very upset. And she said, you know, Christians believe in three gods, we believe in one God. And that was sort of end of story. You know, that's all she knew, you know.
So there you were. How old were you then, Larry?
Well, whatever. 17 years old, I guess, when I graduated from high school.
I was 17 when I graduated too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. You say you got into Eastern religion and started practicing yoga and meditation.
Yeah. This was the senior year in college. Okay. You know, I had never even heard about marijuana until I was a junior in college. I'd never even heard the word, I don't think. I didn't have no idea what even marijuana was. So a junior year in college, some professor mentioned it or something, so I heard about it, but nothing else. But by the senior year, I was using it, and then soon after LSD and other psychedelics. That was 1967, which was the big year when all the hippies came out and all that. So that was happening at that time.
And so you got involved with yoga and meditation.
Yeah, and again, you know, like the Beatles, they were doing the Maharishi and promoting Eastern religion. A lot of hippies were into Hinduism, and so I just sort of followed that path and thought that
it all kind of went together, didn't it?
Right. Yeah, I did. The drugs,
the
Eastern religion, it all seemed to fit together. That somehow you were achieving enlightenment. That perhaps the use of psychedelic drugs was a shortcut to reaching enlightenment in an Eastern sense. A lot of people believe that the drugs were a shortcut to getting enlightened, and so I kept seeking this elusive enlightenment that never sort of came, but you know, I thought I was getting there, and then it would go away when the drugs wore off. Yeah.
Now the next sentence is, you say here, I also got involved in the homosexual lifestyle and was heavily involved in that scene in San Francisco, living a very promiscuous life.
Yes. So I spent, after, like, I was still going to college, but the senior year of college, after I graduated in the spring, that summer was summer of '67. I spent the whole summer, probably 2 to 3 months, in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, using drugs And I would say somewhat before that, when I first started using drugs, there was another student that I had a homosexual relationship with. And so when I came to San Francisco, I realized there was a huge homosexual scene, and I got involved in it, and I was very involved in it. I was couldn't possibly count the number of people I had sex with,
Yeah.
but there was a lot. And of course, I was young and still good looking, and so I had no problem finding people who would want to have sex. So I did it. I had a lot, and those are crazy times. They were before AIDS, before, occasionally you'd go get a VD test, and I'd find out I had gonorrhea, so I'd get a few penicillin shots, and that was over, and then just go on, keep living that way.
Well, you started in the summer of '67. I started in the winter of '67,
Okay.
going to the Haight-Ashbury.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And that was when I was doing my street ministry,
Okay,
which lasted for several years, about 3.5 years.
okay,
That was a very unusual period in history, and it landed and hit at the same time as America's fourth Great Awakening, otherwise known as the Jesus People movement.
yes.
Yeah, all at the same time. And you spent some time in Berkeley as well, and you said, I did meet some Christians in the Haight district and in Berkeley.
Yes, I did.
I'm surprised I didn't run into you.
We might have. I don't know.
We might have.
Who knows?
We might have.
Who knows? I couldn't probably remember. Most of the time I was so stoned on drugs, I didn't know who I was talking to, but sure, we possibly could have. I say I did run into a number of Christians, Jesus people, Christians. I do remember, I'm pretty sure I went to the House of Acts in Nevada. I remember going there.
Huh.
And so, I did have some superficial involvement with Jesus people Christians, but again, I never really heard a clear presentation of the gospel. Maybe because they were confused themselves, and I sensed that there was a lot of confusion among these people about what they believed. A lot of them still thought it was okay to use drugs like marijuana, and so there was. It seemed like there was a lot of confusion there. But I was still attracted to what I saw. I found something. There was something good there, but it did not click for me at that time.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could say the same thing about me, Larry, that I started when I was in the military. I had some friends that were medics, Vern and Don, and I would talk to them about Christianity, and they would talk to me, but I couldn't understand what they were talking about.
Yeah.
It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I would carry a pocket New Testament with me most of the time while I was a hippie. I would have it with me. I read it. Probably read through the New Testament several times before I was saved. And yet, looking back, I really didn't know what I was reading. Here I am, college graduate, whatever, graduate degree, but I could not understand the Bible. Yeah. And and there was just that one missing piece, which was repentance from sin. That was the part.
Yes.
That hung me up, because I just sort of had this idea, well, Jesus died for our sins, so I guess that problem's over with, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can live as I please and still go to heaven, and I just believe in Jesus. Yeah, I believe in him, so I guess that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Genuine conversion is a very different thing, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's a very different thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it, in my years of ministry.
Yeah.
And it's. I always feel a little bit sad when I can see this, somebody who, has a God consciousness but really hasn't been born again.
Yeah.
Which is a radical change.
Yeah.
It's not joining a religion. It's all of a sudden something happened to you.
Yeah.
Something happened to you. So did you know Lonnie Frisbee? Did you meet Lonnie Frisbee? You had to, probably.
Well, I don't remember having met him in those years. I met him in the 1980s, shortly before he died. I met him a couple times, about maybe 3 times. he ministered with us at least 2 outreaches that we did in the late 1980s.
Okay.
So I did know him a little bit. I didn't really spend a lot of time talking to him.
Okay. You ended up going to Portland, Oregon in 1970.
Right.
So tell us about that, Larry. What was that about?
Yeah. Well, it was, I don't want to make it too complicated. I had gotten involved in a cult up in Seattle, Washington, where a lot of people probably would have thought it was Christian. It wasn't. It was totally off. But anyway, I sort of got kicked out.
Okay, do you remember the name of the group?
Yeah, it's called the Love Family.
What, the Love Family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, right. A guy named Paul Erdman was the leader of it. And anyway, they had about 50 people probably in that group. But it was sort of complicated. But anyway, I left that. I got kicked out. I was at a rock concert called Sky River Rock Concert, which was on the border of Portland and I think Vancouver somewhere. And so I went to that rock concert. And then afterwards, we had the idea, about 50 or 60 of us from the concert wanted to start our own hippie commune. So we were traveling together, hitchhiking. Can you imagine 50 or 60 people hitchhiking together? We ended up in a park in Portland, Oregon, and we were there with nowhere to stay. We didn't know what we were going to do. And so anyway, this guy from Texas named Nick Gray, he was in his 50s, to us was really old. He looked like a Texan with a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, everything. And he started preaching to us about Jesus, And so none of us were that interested in his preaching, but he offered us a place to stay. And there was me and one other guy that wanted to get off the streets. So we went and stayed at this, basically it was a Christian commune that was right outside of Portland, Oregon, which was Shiloh Ministry.
Shiloh Ministry.
Yes. And
that was Shiloh. Do you remember Jansen Beach in Portland?
Jansen? No, I don't remember.
Right on the, almost right there on the, just before you get to Vancouver.
Okay, no, I don't remember that. Yeah.
Anyway, I think it was gone by the time you were there.
Maybe, okay.
But I remember it as a kid, the merry-go-rounds and all of the amusements, a great time. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, well, Shiloh Ministry, it was technically called Shiloh Youth Revival Centers. It began in Southern California. It was part of Calvary Chapel. They had a Christian commune called House of Miracles and maybe a couple other communes.
That was Lonnie's House of Miracles.
House of Miracles, yeah. And I don't know if House of Miracles turned into Shiloh or whether they just started a new ministry. John Higgins started Shiloh. And they had a group of people that moved up to Oregon. They were given a piece of land there, about, I don't know how many acres, but 30 acres outside of Eugene. And so they moved up their headquarters up to Eugene, Oregon. And then they started houses up in Oregon, up and down the major cities in Oregon, and started Christian houses. And then the one I got saved in was right outside of Portland, Oregon.
Now, one of the things you say here, you say, these Christians, I think you're talking about the Shiloh people,
right,
told me that I needed to recognize that the way I was living was sinful.
Right.
Okay. So you had that, they started to confront you.
Right.
And what was your reaction?
Well, I'd just been in a cult, and they knew about that cult, and they told me it was a cult, and they showed me some scripture indicating that it was a cult. And one of the scriptures they showed me actually was that there's one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus. And they showed me that this guy, this cult leader, was claiming that, yes, we only get to God through Jesus, but the only way we can come to Jesus is through this cult leader. And so I realized they had another mediator. And so that sort of questioned me about that cult. But other things... they just said, look, just take a few days, read the Bible, pray, ask God to show you whether what we're saying is true or not. And so I did that. And over that period of time, I believe God spoke to me clearly that where I was at, these people were telling me the truth, and this really is the truth. And so I did commit my life to Christ, and I did get saved early in September of 1970. I don't know the exact day, but it was early in the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were baptized
Yes.
in a bathtub.
Right. That's what a lot of us did, Nowhere else to get
I don't
baptized.
think I've ever seen that.
Oh, yeah.
I know
we did.
I'd never done that.
Well, that's what we mostly did. Mostly just filled a bathtub. Everybody, tried to fill up the bathroom and watch while you got baptized in the bathtub. But that's how I got baptized. Yeah, I guess we didn't have any good relationship with the church with the baptismal or whatever. I don't know. But that's how I got baptized. Yeah.
That's funny. You stayed in Shiloh Ministry. They called it Youth Revival Centers.
Yeah, that's the official corporate name. Yeah.
Okay. For 4.5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and living in several houses in different cities.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Shiloh Ministry, I say at its peak, it began, maybe 68 or so, and lasted until 78. And while I was there, we had probably about 40 houses in different cities, most of the major cities around the U.S. We would have a house. And there were all these hippies that were traveling around, hitchhiking from one city to another. And they got the word out that if they needed a place to stay, they could always stay at a Shiloh house. So every day, pretty much, at every house, we would have maybe 10, 15, 20, or maybe even more people that are just like hippies hitchhiking who would stay at our house.
Wow.
They'd come over for dinner. A lot of them would stay for the Bible study. Every night we'd have a Bible study, and they would spend the night. And they would hear the gospel. We witnessed to every single one of them.
Wow.
And some would get saved. Some
sure.
got saved, others left. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that was you're looking at the years immediately following the Jesus People movement.
Well, I mean, I think the years you're giving are San Francisco years, because you were in San Francisco.
Okay.
I was in Oregon and in other places, and until 75 was when I left Shiloh Ministry.
Oh no, okay, no, that's 75 is oftentimes looked at as sort of the end of the Jesus People movement.
Yeah, I would say, even I might even say 78. I don't know, but things were slowing down.
Yeah,
definitely. Our ministry, Shiloh Ministry, ended in 78. Fell apart very quickly. But most Jesus movement houses had fallen apart by then. We had talked earlier about a group called the Highway Missionaries. They lasted even longer, and they were one of the last. Some people will consider Jesus People USA in Chicago to be still part of the Jesus movement. There are also some groups in Europe.
What was the word, Larry?
Highway Missionary Society.
Tell us about that.
That was Jim Palisari.
Oh, is that Jim Palisari?
Yeah, Jim Palisari, yeah.
Okay.
And they were radical, Jesus People.
I knew Jim.
Yes, they were radical. They were in San Francisco for a while. I hung out with them, and they were extremely radical. They showed that they were staying at First Covenant Church in San Francisco. That church generously allowed them to stay there for months. And meanwhile, they totally bashed every church, other than them. It's like every church was lukewarm or backslidden or whatever. And so they probably had very little respect for First Covenant, even though they were generously allowing them to stay in their church, cook their meals, sleep there. And so they were pretty anti-regular church. But they were radical, still radical Jesus People movement people, and they saw people saved. There were people saved through their ministry while they were here. And that was in the late 70s, yeah.
Now, I have to say, I was doing a doctorate at the Presbyterian Seminary in San Anselmo here. My major professor, Lou Rambo, major expert on cults and conversions. In 1978, he told me the church I pastored was a cult.
Okay.
And not theologically. He says, but you think you're better than everybody else. You're more spiritual.
What church was that?
More radical. Church of the Open Door.
Oh, the Church of the Open Door, yeah, which I was involved with for about a year or two. So I was familiar with them, yeah. Yeah. I didn't hear that much at Church the Open Door, but maybe they were saying that in different places. I did. Shiloh, definitely.
Yeah.
Shiloh, definitely. They thought they were better, more spiritual than other Christians.
Moving and grooving in the Spirit.
And you know, it wasn't so much they would actually say it in so many words, but underlying, you knew that's what they thought.
Yes.
You know, and they said, yeah, there are Christians in other churches, but we're really where it's at. If you really want to really serve God, you should be with us.
Yes.
We're the ones who are really doing it right.
Yes. And I was a part of, I had imbibed that mistake too, Larry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So many of us did.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we were really seeing, miracles.
Right.
It wasn't just we were seeing miracles. We didn't understand the nature of an awakening.
Right.
You know, they begin and they end.
Yeah. I mean, it was not totally untrue. I mean, there was some basis for our views.
That's
in the
true.
sense that a lot of churches are pretty lukewarm, and a lot of churches are very, very hard to find. Any church that does any kind of evangelism. I mean, it's like evangelism almost disappeared from the church. So it wasn't that there was no truth to what we said, but our hearts weren't really right in saying it, in that, you know, who are we to go around and say we're better than everybody else? Because we have our own faults.
Right.
Yeah.
We have our own faults. It's growing up.
Yeah.
It's maturing. One of the things is after you became a Christian, you started trying to witness to your family.
Yes.
And how did that work?
Very badly. I had no wisdom. I mean, I was a brand new Christian, had a lot of zeal, no wisdom. And so I just laid it on thick, man. Long letters filled with scriptures. You're all going to go to hell if you don't come to Jesus, and all this stuff. I just, I was just filled with zeal. And of course, I wrote these long letters that I don't think they ever probably got past the first paragraph, and just threw it out into the garbage.
You say here, Larry, they all responded quite angrily.
Oh, yeah, they were angry. My family was furious at me for becoming a Christian, which in a sense is sort of curious in that you look at it, you say, first of all, they never, they would at most attend synagogue twice a year. They made very little effort to keep the Jewish law. I went through a period of 2 years where I basically considered myself a Hindu openly, and they had no objection to that, even though Hinduism is extremely idolatrous, and we worshipped all kinds of gods. And why did they not object to that? And then I went through a period of being an atheist. They didn't care about that.
But being a Christian is something else.
Yes.
There, we got to stop here
I
at
see.
the end of the first program.
I see.
We're going to be back talking with Larry Rosenbaum. Next program, be looking for it. All right, until then, so long.